In a faraway galaxy, many alien species lived in peace, but there were also those who fought for power. Among the powerful races, there was one that had always been feared and respected: the Zorith Empire. Their queen, a strong and wise ruler, had heard stories of human warriors from a long time ago. These stories were always told in whispers, and were seen by most as nothing more than legends. The Zorath Queen, a proud and calculated leader, didn't believe in myths. She ruled her empire with an iron fist, and she had never once met a human. Her people had explored many worlds and fought many battles, but the humans were a mystery. Most of the galaxy believed that humans were extinct, wiped out by a war long before the Queen's time. But those who still spoke of humans always spoke of them as warriors. They said that humans were strong, fast, and nearly impossible to defeat in battle. Some claimed that a single human could take on entire armies and come out victorious. These were just tales to the Queen. She knew that if humans had ever existed, they were nothing more than a footnote in the history of the galaxy. One day, a Zorith scout ship reported something strange. They had intercepted a signal from an uncharted planet, a distress signal from a distant world. The Queen listened carefully to the transmission. It was a cry for help, but the message was unlike any she had heard before. The planet was under attack by an alien race known for their viciousness, the Veldar. This was a species that the Zorith Empire had never encountered directly, but they had heard of them. The Veldar were known for their brutality. Their ships were strong, and their warriors were fierce. The Queen sent a fleet of warships to investigate, confident that the Zorith Empire could handle this new threat. When the fleet arrived at the planet, they were shocked to find something unexpected. The planet was burning, and the Veldar were in the process of launching an all-out assault. The Queen expected to find the usual scenes of destruction and chaos. But what she did not expect was the human standing in the middle of the battlefield. He was tall, his skin tanned by the sun, his eyes fierce with determination. Clad in basic armor, he was not part of any great army, yet he stood alone against the Veldar forces, holding them off with ease. He fought with such speed and precision that it was hard to believe what the Queen's eyes were showing her. The human warrior fought like a storm, quick and brutal. He moved with a fluidity that the Zorith had never seen before. His weapon, a simple energy blade, cut through the Veldar like a knife through soft flesh. For every Veldar that attacked, 2 fell. It was clear that he was a skilled fighter, but there was more to him than just his strength. The way he moved, the way he anticipated every attack, it was almost as if he could see into the future. Every swing, every strike, seemed like it had been planned far in advance. The Zorith fleet watched from a distance, unsure of how to react. The Zorith soldiers on board the ships were used to seeing skilled fighters, but they had never seen anything like this. No one could move so fast. No one could fight so fiercely. And yet this human, this one warrior, was doing just that. The Queen's curiosity began to grow. Could this be true? Could the stories of the human warriors be more than just myths? She ordered her fleet to land, and she watched the human from her command ship, amazed by his strength and skill. The battle finally ended. The Veldar retreated, leaving the human alone on the field. The Zorith Queen sent a small group of soldiers to retrieve him. They landed near the human, who was wiping the blood from his blade. He didn't seem surprised by their arrival, but instead, he just nodded and stood still, waiting for them to approach. The Queen's soldiers, armed and ready, circled him, but the human showed no fear. His eyes scanned the Zorath soldiers with cold precision, but he did not make a move. The soldiers hesitated, unsure of what to do. They had never seen anything like this before. He wasn't a part of any known military, and he was certainly not one of their enemies. The human stood in front of them as if he had all the time in the universe. Slowly, one of the soldiers stepped forward, holding out a weapon. The human didn't flinch. He looked at the soldier, then at the others, and then spoke. "I'm not here to fight you," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Just doing what needs to be done." The soldier stepped back, clearly confused. The Zoroth were used to enemies who feared them, but this human showed no fear, only confidence. The soldier turned and gave a signal to the others to lower their weapons. They had been sent to capture the human, but now they weren't sure if he was an ally or a dangerous opponent. The queen decided to intervene. She stepped forward from the shadows, her presence commanding respect. The human turned his gaze towards her, and for the first time, there was a moment of silence between them. The queen studied the man before her. She had seen many warriors in her life, but none like him. She had read about the ancient human warriors, but she had always dismissed them as stories. Yet here he was, standing before her, alive and real. He had done what no one else could. He had held his ground against the Veldar. "What are you?" the queen asked, her voice sharp with curiosity and authority. The human met her gaze. With steady eyes, "I'm just a warrior," he replied simply. The queen's mind raced. Could this truly be the human warrior from the ancient stories? Is the myth real after all? As the queen took another step closer, she knew that she had to find out. The truth behind the human warrior was something she had to uncover, something that could change the fate of the galaxy. This should set up a good start for the story, with enough mystery and action to keep it engaging. Let me know if you'd like to make any adjustments or continue the story further. Let's chat. The Zorath queen stood still, observing the human warrior as he faced her. His calmness was unsettling. He was alone, with no backup, and yet he had stood against an entire army of Veldar. She had seen many warriors, but none like him. His strength and skill were unmatched, but there was something more about him, something different. The queen had to know who this human was. The human warrior did not bow or show any fear. He stood tall and proud, his posture firm and unyielding. The queen studied him carefully, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. His clothes were simple, nothing like the elaborate armor of the Zorath soldiers. Yet his presence seemed to fill the space around him, as though he was something more than just a fighter. "I thought humans were extinct," the queen said, her voice steady and measured. "The stories I've heard. They spoke of warriors, but I believe them to be myths." The human warrior remained silent for a moment, as if considering how to respond. Then he spoke, his voice low but confident. "I'm not a myth," he said. "I'm just a soldier, doing what needs to be done." The queen's curiosity deepened. She had expected him to say something more boastful, but his response was simple, almost humble. He didn't seem interested in impressing her. Instead, he was focused on the mission, his mission. "You fought the Veldar alone," she said, her tone not quite a question, but more of a statement. "And you won." The human warrior nodded, his expression unchanged. "I did what I had to. People of this planet needed help, and I gave it." The queen felt a strange shift within her. This human wasn't like the other warriors she had encountered. He was not driven by power or glory. He fought because it was right. That made him different from anyone she had ever met. But the queen was not someone who let her emotions cloud her judgment. She had to remain focused. She had to learn more about him, to understand why this human had appeared when the galaxy thought they were all gone. "Why did you come here?" the queen asked, her voice softer now, a rare moment of vulnerability breaking through her usual authority. "I was sent," the human replied simply, "to stop the Veldar. They were attacking this world and no one else was coming to help." The queen's eyes narrowed. There was something strange about his words. He spoke with a certainty that she couldn't quite place. It was as though he knew more than he was letting on. "You were sent by whom?" she pressed. The human warrior paused, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment the queen thought he might not answer, but then he spoke, his words deliberate. "I was sent by a group of humans who were still out there, still fighting to protect the innocent," he said. "We don't give up, no matter the odds. That's who we are." The queen took a step forward, intrigued. She had heard tales of human resilience, of their never-ending drive, but hearing it from one of them was different. Just stories now. The human before her was proof that those stories were real. "Then you are part of a group?" the queen asked. "You are not alone?" The human warrior shook his head. "No, I'm not alone. There are many of us, but we don't stay in one place for long. We move from planet to planet, fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. The queen studied him closely. She had always believed in strength and power. The Zoroth Empire had risen to its current glory through force and fear. But here was this human, standing before her with nothing more than his will to protect others. There was no fear in him, no arrogance, just a quiet resolve. "What is your name?" the queen asked, her voice softening just slightly.
Call?
"Me Jackson," he replied, his tone calm and direct. "Jackson," the queen repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt foreign to her, but somehow it also felt like it belonged. The queen felt a sudden urge to know more. The stories of human warriors had always fascinated her, but meeting one face to face was something she had never expected. She had always dismissed the idea of humans as myths, but now that she had seen one in action, she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Jackson had not only fought with incredible skill, but with a sense of purpose that was rare to find in the galaxy. And that purpose was not to conquer or destroy, but to protect, to fight for the weak and defend those who could not defend themselves. It was a concept the queen had never fully understood. But now, as she stood in front of Jackson, she felt the weight of his words. "Why did you fight the Veldar alone?" the queen asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Jackson looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because no one else would. The people on this planet were helpless. The Veldar would have destroyed them if no one stepped in." The queen paused, considering his words. She had ruled her empire through strength, but she had never considered fighting for the defenseless. Her people were powerful, but they had always sought control. The idea of fighting for the protection of others was foreign to her. "And if I told you that I could offer you a place by my side," the queen asked, her voice measured, yet tinged with interest, "would you join my empire?" Jackson's eyes met hers, and for a moment the queen thought he might refuse. But then, to her surprise, he spoke. "I don't fight for empires," he said quietly. "I fight for people." The queen felt a sense of respect for him in that moment. There was no greed in him, no desire for power. He fought for something greater, and that she realized was something worth understanding. "Then perhaps we have more in common then." "I thought," she said, a small smile forming on her lips. Jackson didn't smile back, but his eyes softened. He knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. And perhaps, just perhaps, this was the beginning of something new. This part builds on the initial encounter between the queen and the human warrior, Jackson, and explores their growing respect for each other. It sets the stage for more development in their relationship and future actions. "Let me know if you'd like any changes or further developments," asked Jackson. The Zoroth queen sat on her throne, her mind racing with thoughts about the human warrior who had shown up out of nowhere. Jackson, as he called himself, was unlike any fighter she had ever encountered. There was no arrogance, no desire for power, only a quiet strength and determination. She couldn't understand it completely, but there was something about him that intrigued her, something that called to her curiosity. The queen had always ruled with strength and control, believing that the galaxy was shaped by those who were powerful enough to command it. But Jackson's simple resolve, his calmness in the face of danger, made her question everything she thought she knew. It was a different kind of strength, one that she had never considered. "Bring him to me," the queen commanded, her voice calm but firm. Moments later, Jackson entered the chamber. His posture was straight, his face expressionless. He had been brought here before, but this time there was something different in the air. The queen had no idea what to expect, but she knew one thing: she needed to learn more about him. Jackson stopped a few feet from the throne, waiting for the queen to speak. His silence was deliberate, as though he was waiting for her to make the first move. The queen regarded him closely, her sharp gaze studying his every movement. She was used. Two people being afraid of her, but Jackson was not afraid. And that, more than anything else, made him stand out. "You are unlike any warrior I've ever seen," the queen began. "I've heard of humans before, but the story seemed ... exaggerated." Jackson met her gaze without flinching. "Have a way of growing over time. I'm no different than any other soldier. I fight to protect the helpless. That's all." The queen considered his words carefully. She had heard of human warriors, but she had never expected to meet one in person. And now here he stood, unshaken, unwavering. It was clear that he was no ordinary soldier. There was something more about him, something that couldn't be ignored. "I want to test you," the queen said suddenly, her voice cold and commanding. "I need to see if you truly are as skilled as you claim. You'll face my best warriors, and we'll see if you're able to survive." Jackson's expression remained unchanged, but the queen noticed a flicker of something in his eyes. A challenge he had been expecting, or was it a test he wasn't sure he could pass? Either way, he didn't back down. "I'm not here to prove anything to you," Jackson said quietly. "But if it's a test you want, I'll take it." The queen nodded, signaling for her soldiers to prepare.
Yes.
She had the arena ready, a large, open space where warriors from all races had fought for honor and glory. Jackson would face a series of tests, each more difficult than the last. He would face warriors skilled in every form of combat-bladed weapons, energy blasts, and hand-to-hand fighting. The queen wanted to see if this human really was as strong as the stories said. He was. She knew he could be useful to her. If not, he would fall just like the others who had tried and failed. As the two walked toward the arena, the queen could feel the weight of the situation. She had always believed in power, in the might of her own people. But there was something about Jackson that made her question if there was more to strength than sheer force. He had already shown that he could fight alone, that he could hold his ground without an army behind him. The idea of a warrior fighting for others without any personal gain was something she could not fully grasp. The arena was vast, surrounded by high walls. Thousands of spectators from all across the galaxy had gathered to watch. It was a place where only the strongest survived. And now, the queen was about to see if this human warrior had what it took to survive. Jackson stepped into the center of the arena, his body relaxed, but focused. The queen watched from above, her gaze never leaving him. She could see the quiet confidence in his eyes, the way he surveyed his surroundings with calm precision. He was ready. The first challenger entered the arena, a tall Zoroth warrior, known for his skill with a blade. He was an expert in close combat, his moves fast and deadly. The queen watched with a critical eye as the warrior lunged at Jackson, his blade aimed for the human's throat. But Jackson moved faster. He sidestepped the attack with ease, his movements smooth and deliberate. With a quick twist of his body, he disarmed the Zoroth warrior, sending the blade flying across the arena. The crowd gasped in surprise. The Zoroth warrior, stunned by the sudden turn of events, tried to land a punch, but Jackson countered with a quick strike to his opponent's chest. The warrior fell to the ground, unable to continue. The queen's eyes narrowed. She had expected Jackson to be strong, but she hadn't expected him to defeat the warrior so quickly. The Zoroth warrior was known for his speed, and yet Jackson had made it look effortless. She knew then that this human was different, but she wasn't convinced. Yet, the next opponent was a skilled energy blade user, a Zoroth elite guard who had been trained in the ancient art of energy combat. He moved with precision, his blade glowing with lethal power. The queen watched intently, her fingers clenched around the arms of her throne. This would be a more difficult test for Jackson. The fight began, and Jackson immediately found himself on the defensive. The energy blade crackled with power as it clashed against Jackson's own weapon. The two warriors were locked in a fierce battle, their blades sparking with each strike. But once again, Jackson's skill became apparent. He parried every attack, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when that moment came, Jackson's blade found its mark. With one swift move, he disarmed the Zoroth guard and sent him to the ground. The crowd erupted into applause, but the queen remained silent. She had never seen anyone defeat her best warriors so easily. Jackson stood tall in the center of the arena, breathing heavily but unbroken. The queen's thoughts swirled. This human warrior had done the impossible. He had proven that the stories were true. And now, she had to admit that the myths of the human warrior were no longer just legends. They were real. This part continues to showcase Jackson's skills and sets the stage for his eventual influence on the Queen. It highlights the test he faces and gives more depth to the Queen's growing respect for him. Let me know if you'd like to continue or adjust. The Queen watched closely from the high balcony of the arena. The sounds of cheering and clashing swords filled the air, but her focus was entirely on the human below, and Jackson had already defeated two of her best warriors, both skilled in different forms of combat. She had expected him to struggle, to show signs of weakness, but instead, he had proved his strength and skill beyond what she had imagined. Now, she couldn't help but wonder what would come next. The Queen's mind raced. She had ruled the Zorth Empire for decades, always placing strength above everything else. Her people were fierce, their warriors among the best in the galaxy. But now, for the first time, she questioned if there was something more to power than just might. Jackson, a human from a race she thought was nothing more than a myth, had shown her that strength could come in many forms. It wasn't just about having the strongest weapons or the biggest army. It was about will, about fighting for something bigger than oneself. The next test would be even harder. Queen's elite warriors, the fiercest and most skilled of all her soldiers, were ready. Jackson had already proven he could defeat individuals, but now he would face a group of them. This would be the true test of his abilities. The Queen gave a silent signal, and the doors to the arena opened. A group of 4 Zoroth warriors stepped into the arena. Each one carried a different weapon: energy swords, plasma guns, and energy shields. They were known for their teamwork, each warrior working in sync with the others, making them nearly unbeatable. The Queen was confident that Jackson would finally meet his match. Jackson stood in the center of the arena, his body tense and ready. He had already fought 2 warriors, and though he was tired, he was not defeated. His focus was unwavering, his eyes scanning his new opponents. The crowd grew silent in anticipation. They had seen Jackson defeat individual warriors, but now they would see him face a real challenge. The Zoroth warriors moved as one, surrounding Jackson and preparing to strike. The first warrior, wielding an energy sword, lunged at Jackson with incredible speed. Jackson barely had time to react, but he managed to block the strike just in time. The sound of the swords clashing echoed throughout the arena. He quickly countered, knocking the warrior back with a swift kick to the chest. The second warrior, armed with a plasma gun, aimed at Jackson and fired. The blast came fast, but Jackson was quicker. He dodged to the side, the shot missing by inches. With a sharp movement, he closed the distance between them and disarmed the warrior, sending the gun flying across the arena. The third warrior, holding an energy shield, charged at Jackson, attempting to strike with the shield. Jackson ducked, narrowly, avoiding the blow, and then took advantage of the opening, landing a precise strike that knocked the warrior to the ground. Unable to continue now, only one warrior remained. This one was different. The final fighter was the most experienced, the leader of the group. He wielded 2 energy blades, one in each hand, and he was fast, incredibly fast. The Queen could see the challenge in his movements. He was more skilled than the others, and his strikes were precise and deadly. Jackson's eyes locked on to the final warrior, his body tense as he prepared for the last fight. The warrior moved swiftly, attacking with both blades in a flurry of strikes. Jackson was forced to block and parry, his movements quick but careful. The energy blades clashed again and again, each strike sending sparks flying into the air. Jackson had faced powerful opponents before, but this warrior was different. The 2 of them were locked in a deadly dance, each one waiting for the other to make a mistake. For a moment, it seemed as though the battle was at a standstill. The leader of the group was skilled, his energy blades moving like lightning, but Jackson's calmness and precision were keeping him at bay. The Queen watched intently, her mind racing. She had never seen someone fight with such control, with such precision. Jackson's ability to anticipate every move, to stay calm under pressure, was unlike anything she had witnessed before. The final warrior made one last desperate move, attempting to land a blow to Jackson's side. But Jackson was ready, in a split second. He sidestepped the attack and used the warrior's own momentum against him. With a powerful strike, Jackson knocked the warrior's blades from his hands, sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd erupted into applause, but the queen remained silent. He had defeated her best warriors dashed together as the last warrior struggled to get up. Jackson stood tall, breathing heavily but unbroken. He had won the fight, and he had proven his worth once again. The queen, however, was still deep in thought. She had seen strength before, but never like this. Jackson's ability to fight, to remain focused, was something she couldn't ignore. He wasn't just a warrior, he was something more. The queen rose from her throne. Her eyes fixed on Jackson. "You have passed every test," she said, her voice steady and firm. "You have proven that you are indeed a warrior like no other." Jackson looked up at her, his face still expressionless. "I'm just doing what needs to be done," he said simply. The queen nodded, her respect for him growing. "You fight for others," she said, more to herself than to him. "That is something I have never understood, but now I think I am starting to see." Jackson remained silent, but his eyes met hers, and for the first time, the queen saw something in his gaze that she had never seen before: understanding. She had spent her entire life fighting for power, for control, but Jackson fought for something else. He fought for others, for people who couldn't defend themselves. It was a foreign concept to her, but it was one that she couldn't deny. The queen took a step forward, her voice filled with a new sense of resolve. "I want you by my side," she said. "I have seen your strength, your resolve. You may not fight for empires, but perhaps we can work together to protect this galaxy from the threats that await." Jackson looked at her, his gaze steady.
"I'll
fight with you," he said, "but only if you're fighting for the right reasons." The queen smiled, a rare expression for someone as powerful as she was. "Then it is settled. Together, we will face whatever comes." In this part, Jackson faces a much larger challenge, and the queen begins to see him in a new light. Their partnership seems inevitable as they begin to understand each other. Let me know if you'd like to continue or adjust any. The queen stood in the heart of her palace, overlooking the vast empire she had built with her own strength. For years she had relied on her power, her control, and her unmatched warriors to keep the galaxy in line. But now, everything was different. Jackson, the human warrior, had shown her a new way of thinking, a new way of fighting. He didn't fight for power or glory, fought for others, for the helpless, for those who couldn't protect themselves. It was something the queen had never fully understood. But now she found herself questioning everything she had ever believed. Jackson had defeated her best warriors, passed every test she had thrown at him, and in doing so, he had earned her respect. But the queen was not a ruler who could easily accept change. She was a strategist, always thinking ahead. And she knew that the galaxy was on the brink of something bigger, something that required more than just strength. It required unity, cooperation, and a shared vision. She had sent for Jackson, and he arrived at her palace soon after. He looked as calm and composed as ever, his eyes never wavering. The queen had grown used to his silent confidence. It was a quality that she found both unsettling and impressive. But today something felt different. The air between them was charged with something new. It wasn't just about testing his abilities anymore. It was about something far more important. "You've proven your strength." "Jackson," the queen said, her voice steady but filled with a sense of finality. "You've defeated my warriors, and you've earned my respect. But that is not enough. If we are to face the threats of this galaxy, we must do more than fight. We must unite." Jackson's expression remained neutral as he listened. He had fought for years, fighting for people who had no voice, no hope. But now he was being offered something new, an opportunity to join forces with the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. It wasn't a decision he would take lightly. He had learned the hard way that power could corrupt. He wasn't sure if the queen was the kind of ruler who would fight for what was right. "What do you mean by unite?" Jackson asked, his voice calm but filled with curiosity. The queen stepped forward, her gaze intense. "I've seen the power that humans hold. Your resilience, your ability to fight against overwhelming odds. It's something the galaxy has never seen before. but we cannot win this war alone. There are threats out there that are greater than any we've faced. We need each other. Need you by my side." Jackson studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he considered her words. The queen was not asking for an alliance out of weakness. She was a ruler, and her words carried the weight of her empire. But Jackson knew that power didn't always mean righteousness. He had seen empires fall because of their lust for control. And yet, there was something in her that made him wonder if she could change, if she could see beyond her empire and fight for something greater. "What is it you want from me?" Jackson asked. He knew that nothing came without a cost, and he needed to understand what the queen was asking before making any decisions. The queen met his gaze, her expression serious. "I want your strength, Jackson. I want your warriors. I want the humans who fight by your side. Together we can change the future of the galaxy. We can protect those who cannot protect themselves. But I need your trust." Jackson's mind raced. He had never trusted anyone in a position of power. His entire life had been spent fighting against those who abused their power for their own gain. But the queen was offering him something different. She was offering him a chance to fight for what was right, not for glory, not for control, but for justice. It was a rare opportunity, one that many would not understand. "Trust is earned, not given," Jackson said, his voice steady but firm. "But I'm willing to consider it." The queen nodded. "I understand. It will take time, but we must work together. We cannot afford to waste any more time. There are threats coming that will shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The Zorth Empire has enemies, and if we do not unite, we will fall." Jackson thought about the battles he had fought, the lives he had saved, the people who depended on him. He had never fought for an empire, but he had always fought for the greater good. The queen's words resonated with him. He had seen what power could do to people. He had seen it destroy worlds, rip families apart. But this felt different. The queen was not asking him to bow to her. She was asking him to join her in a fight for something bigger than any one person, any one empire. "If we're going to do this," Jackson said after a long pause, "we need to make sure our goals align. Power for the sake of power is no better than tyranny. We need to protect the people, not just conquer the galaxy." The queen's expression softened for the first time. "I agree," she said quietly. "I've spent my life building an empire, but now I realize that it's not enough. The galaxy is not just about power. It's about balance. It's about protecting the weak from those who would harm them." Jackson nodded, his mind made up. He had seen enough to know that the queen's words were genuine. She was not asking for an alliance out of a desire for control. She was asking because she understood that strength alone would not save the galaxy. It would take unity, trust, and a willingness to fight for something greater. "Then we'll fight together," Jackson said, his voice filled with determination. "I'm with you." The queen looked at him, a small but genuine smile forming on her lips. It was a smile that was rare for someone in her position, but in that moment, it felt real. "Then let's begin. Together, we will face the challenges ahead, and together, we will protect the galaxy." Jackson stood tall, his resolve strengthened. He knew that their journey would not be easy. There would be obstacles, battles, and sacrifices. But he also knew that this was the right choice. It wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. It was fighting for the people, for the future. And with the queen by his side, they might just have a chance to make a difference. In this part, Jackson and the queen form a new alliance, marking the beginning of their partnership. The queen shows a willingness to change, and Jackson sees the potential for good in her. This sets up the next phase of their journey together. Let me know if you'd like to continue or make any adjustments. The alliance between Jackson and the queen had been formed, but there was still much to be done. The queen had given Jackson her word that they would fight for something greater than power. And for the first time, she felt a sense of responsibility that she had never felt before. The Zorth Empire had always been about strength, control, and domination. But now, as she stood beside Jackson, she realized that true strength came from something deeper. It came from the will to protect, to fight. For the greater good, in the days that followed, the Queen and Jackson worked tirelessly to unite their forces. The Queen's soldiers were skilled and loyal, but they had never fought for the protection of others. Jackson, on the other hand, had fought for years to defend the weak, and his experience in battle was invaluable. Together, they began to train the Zarath warriors, teaching them that strength was not just about defeating enemies. It was about fighting with purpose, fighting for justice. Jackson had shown the Queen a new way of thinking, and now it was her turn to show him that she could change. She had spent her entire life building an empire based on fear, but now she was beginning to see that there was more to life than just power. She wanted to build something greater, something that would last. She knew that Jackson, the human warrior, was the key to making that vision a reality. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the vast city below, the Queen turned to Jackson. "Do you ever wonder what we're really fighting for?" she asked, her voice soft. "I've spent my life fighting to keep my empire strong, but now I'm starting to understand that it's not enough. I want to fight for something that will make a real difference." Jackson looked out over the city, his eyes distant. He had been fighting for as long as he could remember. But his reasons for fighting had always been clear: to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. He had never cared about power or control, only about making sure that the innocent didn't suffer. "I think you already know what you're fighting for," Jackson said. "You've seen what's out there. The galaxy is full of people who need help, people who need protection. We're fighting to give them a future, a chance to live without fear." The Queen nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving the horizon. "And you truly believe we can do that?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Jackson turned to face her, his eyes steady and filled with confidence. "I believe that if we stand together, we can make a difference. We fight for something greater than ourselves, then we can protect the people, and we can build a future where the strong protect the weak. That's the kind of world I want to see." The Queen took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. For the first time, she realized that Jackson wasn't just a warrior. He was a symbol of something greater, a symbol of hope. She had spent so many years focusing on strength, on building an empire that was feared throughout the galaxy. She understood that true strength came from the willingness to fight for others, not just for power. "I never thought I would hear myself say this," the Queen said, her voice quiet. "But I believe you, Jackson. I've spent my entire life building an empire, but I've never really known what it means to protect others. I've always fought to keep control, but now I see that we need to fight for more than that. We need to fight for a future where people are safe." Jackson smiled slightly, a rare expression for him. "It's a hard thing to change your thinking," he said, "but I believe you can do it. You have the power, Queen. Now, you just need to use it for the right reasons." The Queen looked at him, her eyes filled with a new sense of determination. She had spent so much of her life focused on maintaining control, on being the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. But now, she knew that true power didn't come from fear. It came from understanding, from empathy, and from the willingness to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "We'll do this together," the Queen said, her voice firm. "We'll build something better. For the people, for the galaxy. No more just ruling by fear. We'll fight for justice." Jackson nodded, his gaze steady. "That's all I've ever wanted." As the days passed, the Queen and Jackson worked tirelessly to strengthen their alliance. They brought together different species, uniting them under a common cause to protect the innocent, to fight for justice, to build a galaxy where the strong didn't prey on the weak. The Queen knew that there would be challenges ahead, but with Jackson by her side, she felt more confident than ever. She had learned that strength came not from fear, but from the courage to stand up for what was right. Together, began to form a new army, one that was built on the principles of protection and justice. It was a slow process, but the Queen was determined. She had seen the potential in Jackson and the other warriors he had brought with him. They had taught her something she could never have learned on her own, that true strength was not about ruling with an iron fist, but about protecting those who needed it the most. One evening, as the Queen stood before her new army, she felt a sense of pride that she had never known before. She had spent her life building an empire, but now she was building something better. A future. We will face many challenges ahead, the queen said to the gathered soldiers, but we will face them together. We'll protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will build a galaxy where strength is used for good, where we fight for justice and not for power. This is our mission. This is our future. The soldiers cheered, their voices strong and united. The queen felt the weight of their support, and for the first time, she truly understood the power of unity. Together, they would make a difference. Together, they would build a new future. This part shows the queen's growth and her newfound understanding of true strength. Influenced by Jackson, their alliance is now solid, and they are ready to work together to make a lasting impact. Let me know if you'd like to continue or modify